The little girl was asleep on her father's shoulder when the woman behind the front desk slid his key card back across the marble. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "We can't give you a room." For a second, Daniel Mercer didn't move. Outside, the city traffic hissed across rain-dark streets. Inside the Grand Regency Hotel, crystal chandeliers glowed above polished floors. Daniel stood there in a worn gray jacket, carrying one suitcase in one hand and his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, in the other. He looked exhausted. "Please," he said. "She's been traveling all day." The front desk supervisor, Claire Bennett, glanced toward the entrance. A black SUV had just pulled up outside. Then she looked back at Daniel. "You need to leave the lobby." Daniel stared at her. Not angry, just confused. And then Lily stirred against his shoulder and whispered, half asleep, "Daddy, did we do something wrong?" That question changed everything. Daniel had spent the last 6 hours driving through a storm after Lily's school called. Her daughter's class trip had ended early when several children became sick. Daniel had promised her he would come himself. He had, no matter what it cost. But a highway accident had delayed him, and by the time he reached the city, every nearby hotel was full. Except one, the Grand Regency. Daniel had booked a room online that morning. He placed his reservation confirmation on the counter. Claire barely looked at it. The reservation was canceled. Canceled by who? There was an issue with payment verification. Daniel frowned. His card had worked. He knew because he had used it for gas 20 minutes earlier. "Can you check again?" Claire exhaled slowly. Behind her, 2 younger employees exchanged nervous looks. It was the beginning of a major convention weekend. Every important guest seemed to be arriving at once. Claire had already spent the evening dealing with complaints, overbookings, and one angry event organizer threatening to move his entire group elsewhere. She was 34 years old, recently promoted, and desperate not to make another mistake. Then she noticed Daniel's muddy shoes, his old suitcase, the tired child in his arms, and the fact that he had walked into one of the city's most expensive hotels looking like he had nowhere else to go. She made a decision too quickly. "The system shows no active reservation," she said, "and we're fully booked." Daniel looked around the lobby. Even one small room? No. Lily lifted her head. "But my daddy already paid." Daniel immediately rubbed her back. "It's okay, sweetheart." But it wasn't. That was the first twist Claire didn't see. Daniel didn't argue. He didn't demand a manager. He simply picked up his confirmation, thanked her, and turned toward the door. Then one of the bellmen, an older man named Samuel, stepped forward. "Sir," he said, lowering his voice, "there's a storm warning. You shouldn't take that child back out." Daniel looked at Lily. "I'll find somewhere." Claire watched him walk away, and for some reason, guilt hit her harder than she expected. 5 minutes later, the automatic doors opened again. Daniel was back. But this time, he wasn't asking for a room. "There's an elderly woman outside," he told Samuel. "She fell near the curb." Everything changed. Daniel handed Lily to Samuel and rushed back into the rain. Claire followed. An older woman lay beside a taxi, shaken and unable to stand. Daniel had already removed his jacket and placed it beneath her head to keep her from the wet pavement. He stayed with her until the ambulance arrived. Then Claire recognized the woman. Margaret Hale, one of the hotel's oldest board members. Claire's face went pale. Margaret reached for Daniel's hand before the paramedics took her away. "Who are you?" she asked weakly. Daniel smiled. "Just someone who was nearby." When Claire returned inside, Daniel was drying Lily's hair with paper towels. For the first time, she looked at him differently. She opened the system again and froze. His reservation had not failed. Someone had manually canceled it. Claire searched the activity log. The cancellation had been made from the front desk, under her employee ID. Her stomach dropped. She hadn't canceled it. At least, she didn't remember doing it. Then came the second twist. A junior receptionist admitted she had used Claire's terminal earlier that afternoon. She had canceled several reservations to make room for VIP convention guests. Daniel's name was one of them. "I thought he was a no-show," the young receptionist whispered. Claire closed her eyes. She could have fixed it. But instead, she had judged him before checking. Now the hotel truly was full. Claire walked over to Daniel. "I owe you an apology." Daniel looked up. She expected anger. Instead, he simply asked, "Is there somewhere my daughter can sleep tonight?" That hurt more. Claire called 3 nearby hotels. Nothing. She called 6 more. Nothing. Finally, she made a decision. She offered Daniel and Lily the small hospitality apartment used for overnight emergencies. It wasn't luxurious, but it was warm. Daniel looked at Lily, then back at Claire. Thank you. No lecture. No punishment. Just relief. Claire stood there as they disappeared down the hallway, and she felt smaller than she had all night. But the biggest surprise came the next morning. At 7 a.m., every department head received an urgent message. Mandatory executive meeting. Main ballroom. Claire arrived with a knot in her stomach. She had barely slept. She expected questions about Margaret Hale. Perhaps a complaint. Perhaps an investigation. Instead, she walked into the ballroom and stopped cold. At the front of the room stood Daniel Mercer, clean-shaven now, wearing a simple navy suit. Lily sat beside him, coloring quietly at a table. Behind Daniel hung a framed photograph from 20 years earlier. A younger Daniel stood beside his late father outside the hotel during its original reopening. Claire's breath caught. The general manager stepped forward. Most of you know that the Grand Regency is privately owned. A pause filled the room. Few of you have met the majority owner. Daniel looked directly at Claire. Not proudly, not coldly, just sadly. My father built this place, he said. After he died, I kept his name off the hotel. I didn't want people treating employees differently because I was around. Claire felt every eye turned toward her. Daniel continued. Last night, I wanted to see this hotel as an ordinary guest. Claire's hands tightened. I saw some things that made me proud. Samuel, the bellman who had tried to help, the employees who had brought Lily hot chocolate, the young receptionist who had admitted her mistake. Then Daniel paused, and I saw something that worried me. Claire slowly stood. I should have checked before judging you, she said. The room went silent. I was under pressure. But that isn't an excuse. I saw your clothes, your suitcase, your daughter, and I decided who you were before I knew anything about you. Daniel nodded. You made a mistake. Claire swallowed. I understand if you want me gone. Lily suddenly looked up from her drawing. Daniel glanced at her, then back at Claire. My wife used to say the worst kind of mistake is the one we refuse to learn from. For the first time, his voice softened. She died 4 years ago. Since then, I've been raising Lily alone. And I've learned something. Being tired can make you impatient. Being afraid can make you unfair. But what matters is what you do after someone shows you the truth. Claire looked down. Daniel did not fire her. Instead, he gave her responsibility for creating a new guest care policy. No reservation could be canceled for a VIP without direct confirmation, and every displaced guest had to be personally assisted until another solution was found. Claire accepted. Months later, on another busy convention night, a tired woman arrived with 2 children and a damaged reservation. Claire was overwhelmed. The lobby was full. Every room was booked. For 1 second, she remembered the old version of herself. Then she walked around the desk. Kneeling beside the children, she smiled. Let's figure this out together. From the far end of the lobby, Daniel watched with Lily beside him. Lily looked up at her father. Is she going to get fired? Daniel smiled. No, sweetheart. Why not? He looked across the lobby as Claire helped the frightened family. Because sometimes people don't need to be destroyed for their worst moment. Lily thought about that. Then Daniel added quietly. Sometimes they just need a chance to become better than it. And beneath the chandeliers of the hotel he owned, Daniel finally understood what his father had been trying to build all along. Not just a beautiful place for important people, but a place where no ordinary person ever had to prove they mattered. Because true worth is not something you discover after learning who someone is. True character is how you treat them before you know.